The other piece of news and discussion we got to get ourselves into here, the New England Patriots going and getting themselves a wide receiver one, a much needed wide receiver one. We can go ahead and take a look at some of the tweets here that we're blasting out. Adam Schefter, again, getting a lot of screen time today. Free agent wide receiver Stefon Diggs reaching an agreement on a 3-year, $69 million deal, including $26 million guaranteed with the New England Patriots. He then had another follow-up tweet afterwards that I thought was interesting here because there was some uncertainty surrounding this scenario as well. New Patriots wide receiver Stefon Diggs, who's coming off of a torn ACL suffered in Week 8 versus the Colts last season, is on track to return for Week 1 of the upcoming season. It was another reason the Patriots felt comfortable giving Diggs the 3-year, $69 million deal that GM Elliott Wolf and Diggs agent Adisa Bakari, I believe is how that's pronounced, of the Sports ENT Group negotiated here. So, with all that being said, this one in my eyes makes a ton of sense. Yes, Stefon Diggs is coming off that torn ACL. Yes, he's going to be 32 in the upcoming season. I believe in November is when his birthday is. I get all that. I completely understand maybe the concern. And also, there's people that are worried about his character and all of that. I understand all of that. But the reality is that Stefon Diggs is somebody who made his mark, made his name in the NFL because he is one of the best route runners in the league at what he does. Sure, he's probably lost a step. Maybe he's not nearly as athletic as he was when he was 24, 25, 26 years old, especially now more so coming off of that torn ACL. We'll see what he looks like in this first year back. It always takes, it feels like, especially at the skill position, guys, like about a year or so to really get back to form. So if it's a 3-year deal and Stefon Diggs is around in 2026, that's going to be more so the true form that you're going to see from Stefon. But this isn't about him being the break the top off the defense type of stuff. This is a guy that in Josh McDaniel's system, who he's known for having a very complicated, nuanced system where it benefits from having guys who can run the entire route tree. Stefon Diggs is literally that guy. And when you look at this wide receiver room behind Stefon Diggs, you're looking at Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte. Douglas and Boutte, I will say, more so Douglas than Boutte, but Douglas definitely showing some flashes here and there, especially last season. Boutte had a few big plays himself, but then you're looking at like Mac Hollins, who feels somebody who's played with McDaniel, so he has the experience in that system and someone that will probably help with just the culture reestablishing that's going on in New England. But then like Javon Baker, who is a guy that couldn't even find the field last season. Jalen Polk, who a lot of people are making a lot of jokes about for having stone hands. You have also Jaquan Jackson and John Giles, two guys I didn't even know were on the roster. No offense to them. I just didn't know until I finally went to go look at the entire wide receiver room last night as this news was breaking. So the wide receiver room definitely needed an upgrade and desperately needed an upgrade. And I think that Stefon Diggs, even if he is an aging guy coming off of an injury, he's someone whose skill set fits what New England's going to need from them. And I don't think this ends like marks the end of the upgrades to the wide receiver room. What it does do is allows this team to now really go into the draft and go after best available at basically every single selection. Because at this point, the only thing they have not really addressed is the left tackle position, which it feels like that is going to be how they address round number 1. It's going to be a tackle, whether it's going to be a Will Campbell or an Armand Membu or somebody else of the likes, maybe a Josh Simmons if you're willing to roll the dice on him, because he'd be tackle number 1 if he didn't sustain his injury last year. It sounds like tackle in the first round, and then you fill out the rest of the roster with best available from there. Whether they wind up being able to trade back or not obviously remains to be seen. A lot of people have their doubts about whether they will even be able to or have an offer. As far as I'm concerned, at this stage now with Stefon Diggs on the roster, you take whatever you're willing to get. Even if you don't feel like the haul is that great, any sort of extra selections giving you another extra hit or two in the draft is only going to benefit the Patriots. So at this point, I think a trade back and taking somebody like Membu or Simmons makes a lot of sense in my eyes. But that just seems like the direction they can now go, because they've addressed wide receiver. They're probably going to draft another one. They're probably going to address the O-line a few times. There's maybe, a defensive player or two they're targeting, but it's going to be a lot of retooling the O-line, adding an additional wide receiver, and just creating more competition within a wide receiver room that desperately needs it, because I don't really think by any means this group is solidified at all. And the one thing that it's really funny to keep going back to is just winning that game in Week 18 against the Buffalo Bills really screwed over the Patriots. I don't think that that's been amplified enough at times. If they lose that game, they hold the keys to the number 1 pick. They're getting whoever they want. They control the draft. They're probably trading out of the number 1 spot because of just their team needs and their team structure, because Tennessee's going to desperately want Cam Ward, as they are clearly very much in on him right now. There's a team that's probably desperate to get a Travis Hunter, an Abdul Carter, or maybe they really like Shador. Like, those top 4 guys in the draft are top 4 guys for a reason this year, and they don't necessarily need those top 4 guys specifically. Like, they could absolutely use them, but they don't necessarily need them. Their biggest need right now, based off everything that's happened, has been left tackle, and you don't need to be picking at number 1 for that. So it's unfortunate they're not, because you probably get a really good haul for that number 1 pick, but obviously beating the Bills in Week 18, man, oh man, did that set you back this year. And it's crazy to think that going from pick number 1 to pick number 4 set the Patriots that far back as far as how this draft outlook is going. The other thing I want to address here is just the character concerns, because there's been so much conversation about this regarding Stefon Diggs and whether anyone should be worried about this or not. And in my eyes, I've kind of felt like this for a while, no, but it's nice to see that there are people who have been with Stefon Diggs that are basically coming out of the woodwork to defend this guy and ultimately praise the fire and competitive nature that he brings to the game here. Albert Breer had a really good article that he put out a couple of days ago, just going over a number of different things. Stefon Diggs happened to be one of the guys discussed in the article, and just a couple of notes that I pulled from here that I really, really liked about Stefon Diggs and just people coming to his defense. Few notes from that article. Most who've worked with him love him, not like, but love working with him. In fact, those were the extra words I remember getting over text when things first got bumpy for Diggs a couple of years ago. A coach who'd been with him in Buffalo said, "I effing love him." That sentiment isn't rare and kept coming up over the weekend when I asked folks, from those who had him in Minnesota to those who were with him in Houston. Next one here reads, "Absolutely," texted one coach who had him as a Viking when asked if he liked working with Diggs. "He's one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet. The guy is a warrior. Loved him," a Texan staffer texted. "Loves football, practices hard and with purpose, wants to be coached, didn't have any of the game day stuff that people talked about. He's a much warmer person than the stigma that follows him. I'll be hopeful about where he lands." This is something that I've kind of felt for a while now going into this offseason, because his stint in Houston by no means was poor. He was looking really good before he went down tearing his ACL. He was extremely productive. He basically got thrusted into a number 1 role, even though he was supposed to be the number 2 to Nico Collins. And he was doing an excellent job. I believe he was like 7th or 8th, something along those lines, in total receptions of all receivers in the league before he went down with the injury again. And that's as a 31-year-old wide receiver. That's somebody who or I guess 30 at the time. I don't remember exactly when Week 8 was last year. Maybe it was right before he turned 31. But again, as a 30-year-old wide receiver, you're 7th in the league in receptions. You're tearing it up because he's an elite route runner. Athleticism was not the do or die for him. It was all about his ability to exploit coverages, being able to create separation because he's such an elite route runner. So you're bringing in a guy who everyone has seemed to love working with, and the biggest issue that he's ever had, when you really break down all the trouble and just like nonsense that's surrounded his diva-like mentality, is that he just wants the ball. He wants to produce. He wants to help lead his team to victory. That's not a negative in my eyes. It's not at all. You have a guy that is a competitor, an elite competitor. And when you look at the roster that the Patriots currently have, or at least had coming out of this past season, that's the type of guy that you kind of want on this team right now. So if your biggest concern going into this next season with Stefon Diggs is just making sure that he's getting the football enough, when you look at the rest of your wide receiver room and just what this passing game looked like last season, that is not the worst place to be in my eyes. So I'm excited to see what Stefon Diggs brings to the table. He was basically the juice that really helped catapult Josh Allen to that next level. And while, again, Stefon Diggs a little bit older, hopefully a little bit more savvier, and, we'll have to really rely on his ability to create separation with his route running abilities, I think he can do, even if it's not to the level of Josh Allen, there is going to be something of that similar effect for now Drake Maye in New England. This is the guy that Drake Maye desperately needed. And again, I don't think this means they're done adding to the room. I think you're going to see another wide receiver, maybe even two, depending on who is available when the Patriots are drafting, added to the room to really up that competition, because it's a room that desperately needs that competition. So this is something that, listen, it's nothing but a positive. $26 million guaranteed over 3 years is chump change, considering what is getting thrown around in the NFL right now for a guy that's going to be the top guy on your roster as far as wide receivers are concerned. This is a win for the Patriots no matter what happens here. I mean, you're literally bringing in a legitimate guy that Drake Maye will be able to look to on any down, especially a go-to guy on third down that you can trust and get the football out to. Patriots fans, you have every reason to be celebrating the Stefon Diggs signing in my eyes. But